Hello everyone and welcome to this video, which is in our Reengineering the Chess Classic series. I'm Grandmaster Matthew Sadler and we are continuing our great little series on the fantastic Italian player Sergio Mariotti, Italy's first Grandmaster, known as the Italian Fury for his gambit play, attacking style, yeah, a really fantastic player in the 70s and 80s, who, despite being an amateur for much of it, beat a lot of the world's best players. So we're going to be having a look at a lot of his games. We already saw his most famous game, the game where I got to know him as a small child, his game against Gligoric. Now we're going to have a look at this victory against the extremely strong Lev Polugayevsky in 1975 at the Budapest tournament. Mariotti is white, Polugayevsky is black. Let's see how it went. So e4, c5, knight f3, d6, d4 takes, and then queen takes d4. So this was one of Mariotti's regular openings, probably chosen a little bit in order to avoid Polugayevsky's knowledge of the Najdorf Sicilian, which, well, couldn't be bettered at the time. Yeah, this is a pretty nice choice against somebody who's so theoretically booked up. I think, in general, Polugayevsky's record against slightly less theoretical openings was less impressive than his record in the big theoretical stuff. So after queen takes d4, well, if black plays knight c6, white's aim is to go bishop b5 and pin the knight. And a6 is quite a common variation, just intending to play knight c6 without allowing bishop b5. I used to play this line quite a bit. Bishop d7 is also possible with the same idea. But often what happens is that the bishop might go later to g4, and then you've just wasted a tempo with bishop d7 to g4. In principle, a6 should be a useful move because you might want to play b5 later. So white plays c4 and gets into some sort of Maroczy-bind structure with these two pawns on c4 and e4 holding back the black pawn on d6. If black plays e6, then this pawn, yeah, might easily become weak on the half-open d file. Knight c6 and now queen d1 from Mariotti. Stockfish tends to play the move queen e3 in these positions, which is quite a nice one. I mean, the queen stops the black queen from coming to b6. It defends the pawn on e4 and yeah, doesn't actually impede any of the other pieces, so quite nice. But queen d1 is another fairly major line. G6 from black, so you're going to put the bishop on the long diagonal. You're not going to play e6, so you're going to keep this strong structure. So you're not going to worry at all about white attacking the d pawn along the half open d file. On the other hand, by playing a move like g6 and not playing e6, it does mean that white often gets the opportunity to put a knight on d5, and it's not easy for black to drive it away. So, swings and roundabouts. But for the moment, I mean, both sides are just, maneuvering into position. So h3, bishop g7. h3 just to stop black from playing bishop g4. It's always one of those interesting ideas, I mean, is it worth stopping black from playing bishop g4? I mean, if black takes on f3 later, then it'll give white the two bishops. But on the other hand, it does free black's position. Black's a little bit more cramped, of course, on the back ranks, so swapping a pair of minor pieces is not bad in general. And of course, taking the knight means that black gets a bit more control over d4, e5. Also probably the possibility to play b5 is just a little bit easier. So in general, white just plays h3 just to stop giving black any easy ways to free his position. Bishop g7, and now an interesting move from Mariotti. Shows some good opening awareness there. Played the move bishop e2. Why wouldn't white play knight c3? Well, introducing now a theme that you're going to see throughout the opening, because if there's one thing that the engines want to do to play this position as black, it's to play the move bishop takes c3. So what you're doing, yeah, I mean, you're giving up your gorgeous dragonish dark squared bishop. Obviously, you're weakening the dark squares on the king side, but you're getting these clear targets to attack. And the engines just really, really like this. For example, carry on queen a5, knight f6, knight d7, knight c5, and queen a4. This is quite typical, and yeah, the engines just feel basically that that black has equalized in these positions. It's quite interesting actually because yeah, I mean I got something like this against Lisa Schut in the Wijk aan Zee tournament, so the Dutch strong Dutch women's player, and yeah, I played bishop c3, and I thought it was little bit scary somehow, but I thought I was being quite creative there. But yeah, the engines just wanted every single time. But with bishop e2, Mariotti avoids this. Knight f6, now knight c3 when black can't play bishop takes c3. And now Polugayevsky played castles. Actually, the engines just want knight d7 with the idea of, you've guessed it, just to take on c3. Various move orders possible, but queen c7, and then you're just going to play knight c5 and b6, and yeah, blockade this pawn and eventually win it. And on the king's side, you'll play moves like f6, just keep the white pieces at bay. And yeah, I mean, in general, I find that these positions are somewhat easier to play for black. It's easy to make some mistakes as black, but I do find that with white, white needs to play very actively to make these pawns work, and it's not at all easy to launch a kingside attack. You'd think it would be easy with the dark squares unprotected by the dark squared bishop, but it's not as easy as it looks. So yeah, the engines, that's what they want for black as a plan. Castles, and Polugayevsky played bishop d7. Yeah, I mean, it's one of those moments, I suppose, where the engine recommendation here and here is the sort of thing that you'd look at and think, do I really want that? Do I really want to do that? I know the engine thinks it's best, but don't I have anything else? Actually, the engines tend to think that with black playing just kind of normal developing moves, that white's at 0.83. So actually they're giving white a fairly clear advantage in this position if black isn't going for this bishop takes c3 idea. So quite interesting actually. It makes the system maybe reasonably tempting with white somehow, because if black's got to do something that for human players feels a little bit risky, a little bit nervous about weakening your dark squares and all that, then and if you don't do that, then white's just got a nice advantage. Then yeah, those sort of opening lines are the ones that are interesting to play somehow. So rook b8 was played by Polugayevsky. He's going for the line b5 here. And yeah, Mariotti played the move knight d2, which is quite interesting. So defending the pawn on e4, and therefore giving him the possibility to retake on b5 without dropping the e4 pawn when black plays b5. Actually, Stockfish wants to play the move a3. And he gives himself 1.16, which is a very big advantage in actual fact for these modern engines. And just plays to meet b5 with b4. It feels very loose with that knight on c3, but the engines don't feel that it can be exploited. And yeah, I mean, if b takes c4, we're playing bishop takes c4, we're attacking the pawn on a6. Nice majority, knight coming into d5 later. Yeah, I mean, I doesn't feel to me like a 1.16 clear advantage engine will win it every time as white advantage, but I can see why it's quite nice for white. And if white just gets consolidated, if you go rook c1 and then later play the queen to e2, rook to d1, you're just on a very nice harmonious position, and black's struggling to get the pieces really going on the in the center there. I mean, after knight d2, Polugayevsky played knight e8. Amazingly enough, the engines just want this move b5 anyway. And after takes on b5 takes, knight takes b5, just want to play the move d5. So it's sort of doing a kind of a Benko gambit here, and then breaking open the center, and then just trying to play for compensation. It's not complete compensation by any means, but yeah, there's definitely play for black. I thought it was really interesting, but also interesting to see what how seriously the engines are taking the risk of being passive, and how they're just willing to give away a pawn basically just to start freeing up the pieces a little bit. But knight e8 is not such a bad move. After Mariotti's knight b3, I think you can guess what the engines wanted. It was bishop c3 and then b6. Stop white from playing the move c5, and then you're just going to try and get the pieces going. Actually, the engines might play the knight back to f6, or they might just go knight g7 to e6. You know, it's not half as good a version as it was before, but it's still you know, in the ballpark of decent for black. Again, very hard decision for a human to take. b6 played, queen d2, and now, you know, the engines are back at an advantage like 0.92. So I mean, that's for them, this is you know, a very clear advantage. Nice amount of space, solid in the center, no real counterplay for black. Easy. So yeah, I've got to find a plan here. I mean, Polugayevsky played the consistent idea. This knight's coming round to c7, maybe supporting b5, or it's maybe coming round e6 into c5, or helping fight for d4. Bishop h6 was played by Mariotti. The engine's quite like rook d1, you know, to always be able to meet b5 with c5, I guess. And if knight e6, then they were quite happy to play f4 and yeah, you know, maybe exchange off the dark squared bishops later. But exchanging off the dark squared bishops is quite a normal plan for white. I mean, in some ways it feels funny, you know, to exchange off your dark squared bishop when your pawns are on light squares. Don't you just leave yourself with a bad bishop? On the other hand, you know, this bishop is clearly black's most active bishop. I mean, this light squared bishop is doing nothing. So, you know, it's one of those things, you know, you reduce your own activity a little bit, but you think that you're going to reduce black's activity by more. Yeah, positional play, it's all about those trade-offs. So knight e6 played, bishop g7, king g7, and now f4 from white. And yeah, I mean, white's just teeing up nicely, gaining extra space and asking black, you know, what are you going to do? Knight c5 was played by black. Yeah, I mean, f6 was the engine choice, but it's not so dissimilar to what Polugayevsky did. Knight c5 and now knight d4, and yeah, this is an interesting little moment here. I mean, the engines are saying you really need to take off here and play f6. You should take the opportunity to swap off another pair of minor pieces. You're on the back 3 ranks. You're cramped. You know, just you know, swap that off. And also it gives you the chance to play b5. You know, the line of the bishop has been opened here, so you should be able to get b5 as well. I mean, white's got the possibility of playing e5. Got to watch out for that, but, you know, it's not so bad, really. Polugayevsky played f6, and now knight c2. And the engines like this a lot. Back up to 0.99. I mean, basically, you're leaving this knight on c6, where it's not actually doing a great deal. Can't go to e5 anymore, and it's blocking the bishop on d7, so b5 is tricky. And yeah, I mean, you're maybe even threatening b4, and the knight's also got a nice path round to e3, maybe to d5, maybe even to g4, who knows? So Polugayevsky played the move a5 here, and I mean, this is a good move in principle. I mean, it's stopping b4, it's sort of solidifying the knight on c5, but of course, you know, I can imagine that that Polugayevsky had a bit of heartache doing it, because it means that your counterplay with b5 is not coming. And I mean, you've got to be really careful with black here, especially as a human player, because engines can sort of, you know, look at these sort of positions and say, okay, I don't have that much counterplay, but there's nothing wrong with my position, so I can just hold it forever. I mean, modern engines are not keen in steering for these positions, but if you put them in there, they're as capable of doing that as they've ever been. But for human players, it's quite difficult. And especially, I'm sure Polugayevsky was thinking, you know, I should be making a win against my opponent. You know, I mean, you know, Mariotti was strong there, but Polugayevsky was, you know, top 5 in the world somehow, and in a tournament, you know, you've got the people that you should beat in a tournament, and the people you've really got to try hard against, and the people that you know, just say, well, you know, we'll take a draw. I'm sure you know, his colleagues from the Soviet Union would be the ones he'd try and draw against, and the foreigners would be the one he'd try to beat. So so this sort of situation that Polugayevsky has sort of landed in, where he's just passive, and Mariotti is going to start teeing up to attack. Not one that he'd particularly like. But it's got to be done. So knight e3 played by Mariotti, just bringing the knight into play. Bishop c8 from Polugayevsky. And this is an interesting move. I mean, the engines actually are looking to play the bishop round e8 to f7. Just solidify that kingside, and, hold yourself. But, yeah, obviously, Polugayevsky looking for some play somehow. And so he's looking to bring the bishop to b7 and attack the pawn on e4. Yeah, understandable. But obviously, yeah, there's not many pieces on the king side there. So, got to be a little bit careful. Rook d1 from Mariotti, very sensible. Bishop b7 and just bishop f3. Stockfish was looking actually at playing b3 and then bishop d3. Not worrying at all about this exchange because it's black most active knight, so let's get rid of it. Why not? And otherwise, the bishop just drops back to c2 or to b1. From c2, it can support a later a3, b4. And of course, on this diagonal, it's pointing towards the king, and we can start maybe teasing open the black king side with this. There's no minor pieces defending the black king, so that's quite nice. I mean, just for example, this was Stockfish against Torch. Engine games I ran, bishop c2 and then h4, and then Stockfish fiddled around a bit, and then later, much later, you get the move h5, and storm clouds are gathering, So this was also very interesting. I do like these moves like bishop d3. You see this a lot with the engines. I always found them. Rather hard to make those sort of moves. To play a bishop and put it on a square where it can be exchanged like that. But yeah, this understanding appreciation of, okay, I'm swapping off my bishop, but for black's most active knight. That's difficult always to judge well. But what Mariotti did was very, very good. Bishop f3 simply. And now, yeah, this is where Polugayevsky, I think he just sort of shows that he hasn't quite settled into, am I going to play super aggressively or am I going to try and hold? Because he played the move a4, which is a really strange one somehow. I mean, I think he wanted to exploit the fact that White hadn't played b3, when White might be able to get in b3 and a4 later. So he really wanted to sort of say, ha, you forgot that. But this does feel a little bit loose somehow, this pawn. Suddenly it's possible for White to think about playing b4 at some stage. There isn't half as good a restriction of that now that the pawn's on a4. And of course, with the pawn on a4, this knight on c5 can't move anywhere. So yeah, it feels like a loose move to me. If I saw it, I was White and I saw it, I'd think, that's in my favour, I'm pretty sure. The engines want to play Polugayevsky to play the move. He played a move later, which is to go e5, trying to stick the knight into d4. I mean, if we go queen d6 and we just take and go e takes f4, knight ed5, knight e5, and I mean, there's all sorts of threats there. I mean, even if White gets that pawn on f4 as an extra pawn, it's not terrible because Black's got some nice squares for the knight and some pawns to attack as well. So yeah, I mean, after sorry, I keep on. Must be a bit excited. I keep on going too far back. So f5, knight d4 was the main line. I mean, that knight is not particularly solid on d4. We can get rid of it. But maybe in the meantime, Black can make some counterplay against something like the c4 pawn, or even think about getting b5 in. The engines were kind of holding this somehow for Black, But after a4... yeah, knight b5 is what the engines wanted. Just stick a knight on b5, really just stop e5 altogether, and then just gradually just move in. What Mariotti did was very interesting. He just played the move queen c1 there, and just opening up the line of the rook on the queen there, and asking Black, what are you going to do? This queen also might, just move to b1 maybe to support b4, or even think about moving to the long diagonal, just eye the black king there. Well, Polugayevsky decided, I think, that it was time he had to do something somehow, so he played e5. But it's not particularly great now. Yeah, actually, I mean, with the queen on c1, Yeah, knight b5 is extremely strong now. 1.22 for the engines heading into this one. E takes f4, rook takes d6. And quite a funny moment in the game now, because to be honest, I mean, queen e7 is a pretty natural move for black. And after knight d5, queen e5, yeah, a lot of engine games were played, with this. And yeah, it just ended up being quite good for white. I mean, white takes back the pawn on f4. We go rook d8, and then this nice move, rook d5. Typical thing, a very important theme for everyone to know, actually, that you don't exchange on your opponent's terms. You try and exchange improving your own pawn structure. For rook d5, we could go e takes d5, for example. So queen e7, queen c3, knight e5. Now we take off and we put the knight into d5. And it's clear that, white's got an extra pawn here. Black's entrenched on the dark squares and has some pawns to attack. But yeah, the black major pieces are sort of they're just shut out by the knight on d5. So white's got a lot of activity here, and this knight can be brought back and start doing some damage. The f6 pawn is weak. A lot of wins happening for the engines in my engine games there. But and I'm sure if Polugayevsky had played queen e7, then Mariotti would have just played knight d5. But Polugayevsky played queen e8, and knight d5 is pretty strong. It would actually just transpose after queen e5. That's how that's what happened with a lot of the engine games when I gave them queen e8. Knight d5 happened, and then queen e5, and we're back into our main line. But after queen e8, Mariotti got captivated by an incredible attacking idea and decided to do it. But it's not actually the best move. So, yeah, this queen e8 from Polugayevsky, giving Mariotti some extra choice, could have turned out to be an inspired move, basically, because it tempted Mariotti to do something that wasn't the best. But I don't know whether Polugayevsky really felt that during the game, because I think he was a really nice guy, Polugayevsky, incredibly nervous. So I can only imagine how he must have been during the game, getting this lunatic just attacking him in the following way. Because Mariotti played knight g4. So, yeah, looking at the h6 square, looking at the f6 square, if the queen was on e7, everything would be defended. But yeah, this pawn on f6 is less defended. So that's what tempted Mariotti. But Polugayevsky played very concretely. h5 sort of said, well, come on, hit me. And, well, maybe not necessarily to his delight, he was hit with knight takes f6. The engines give this approximately equal, in actual fact. So, yeah, compared to knight d5, Mariotti has thrown away some of his advantage. But the what Mariotti's intending is really, really nice. Takes, queen takes f4 check. King g7, and then bishop h5. Opening up the king, we've got threats of queen d6, and yeah, I mean, also some bishop takes g6 is bound to happen if the black queen moves away. Something like queen e5, we've got queen f7. So basically, Polugayevsky has to take on h5 here. And, what has white got here? I mean, in principle, white doesn't have so many pieces attacking on the king side. The queen, of course, is very active, but the rook isn't quite there yet, although it assists on the f-file. But the big thing really is that white has this possibility of playing knight d6, gaining time and coming into f5. And then we're going to have, or even f7. And then we're going to have three pieces attacking the black king. And, well, Mariotti actually points this out on Gambito Club in the videos where he talks about his own games. And I think if I'm understanding his Italian, it's going pretty fast for me, really. But yeah, I mean, black's pieces, all of them are on the queen side there. And yeah, I mean, if a knight, a queen, and a rook are in the attack, that is, quite an advantage for white, a numerical advantage for white. So yeah, it's definitely an attack that's based on some real, attacking understanding there. Mariotti's next move was probably not the best. He played queen f6 check. The engines like the very subtle queen c7 here. Now the idea is black's got to be a little bit careful with the old king-a-rooney there. If king h6, we can bring the rook in with rook f6, which is not very nice. And if king h8, then rook f6 is well, also quite scary. You know, black's still okay, but that is quite worrying. So king g6 or king g8 are the best move, and then we give this queen g3 check. King h7, and this is actually quite nice. The queen, with tempo, has moved to the g file, which leaves the rook free to invade. It's basically gaining a tempo on Mariotti's continuation in the game, and black now has the opportunity to play knight d6. And at first sight, this is even winning, right? Because we're attacking the queen, and we're also threatening rook f7 check. I mean, this is really, really serious. Black has only got one move here, and this is knight d4, threatening knight e2 check. White plays queen h4, and queen g6, and rook f6. As you'll see, you know, basically white's a tempo up on the continuation that Mariotti got here. And well, actually, black's more or less only move is to play the move knight f3 check, give a piece back, just to chase away the white rook, just buy the rook's absence somehow. And after bishop takes e4, we've got this counterplay, which is quite typical for black, hitting the g2 pawn, so you're not able to move freely with your rook anymore. So queen e7 check. Let's have a look. Queen e7 check, king g8, rook f2. Got to keep the g2 pawn protected there. Well, very complicated position, but the engines think that that it's approximately balanced. That black should be able to hold this. But yeah, I mean, in practical terms, you look at this and you think, oh, I'd rather be white somehow. So that was the really nice move, queen c7 check. What Mariotti did was play queen f6 check, king h7, and queen h4. But you're going to see you're just going to be kind of a tempo slower there somehow. And black's got some extra possibilities. You know, e4 is hanging, for example. What Polugayevsky did was play the move knight e6, just bringing a knight a little bit close to the king. I mean, also looking for this move knight g7, just to cover h5 and put a little bit of a barrier on the g file. Knight d6 played, queen g6, and now the move rook f5. Not the best according to the engines. The engines wanted the move rook f7. And after king g8, that's the only move, then rook f6. And yeah, giving the black queen a little bit of a worry, and obviously threatening to take it with check. So queen g5 would be the best move here, and takes, check, rook g5, and a lot of these endings crop up in the engine games, and white's got 3 pawns for the piece, and well, they're all a little bit loose and relatively easy to attack or exchange. So white was always managing to make a comfortable draw from these positions. But that was kind of you know, what the engines thought was the best. By the way, if you go king h8 and I go rook f6, this is kind of very, very nasty, because unfortunately after queen g5 now we've got knight f7 check, and well, there's just no way to defend this pawn basically. So yeah, it's just completely winning for white. So that would still have been very dangerous. Rook f5. I do get the feeling that Mariotti was really, he didn't want to start giving checks to give Polugayevsky easy moves. I mean, I guess that both players were in a lot of time trouble here. So rook f5 is I recognise this, you know, as a very practical move. Don't give black any easy moves, you know, forcing moves. Keep the pressure on, force black to find something. But Polugayevsky, superb player, he played knight cd4. I guess there was also playing for a little trap here, which is quite an amazing one. After knight g7. Which is the most obvious move, and obviously you could sort of feel maybe Polugayevsky will play this automatically, just to play knight g7 and defend the pawn on h5. There's this lovely little trap, rook f6, and yes, the queen is trapped. Amazing. I haven't seen many traps like this. Feels like in an open board basically, but the knight covers e8, and the queen just hasn't got another spot to go to. So maybe Mariotti was looking for that, but Polugayevsky played a good move, knight d4. Yeah, just targeting these squares, and yeah, all of these checks make it easier for black to exchange pieces somehow. Maybe maybe in return for a piece, but then you've got 2 extra pieces with black, right? So that'll actually won't be so bad. Rook h5 check was played by Mariotti, but king g8, and there's a very big problem now, and this actually means that black's winning in this position virtually, and that's that black is threatening the move knight f3 check. But Mariotti played another quiet move, king h2, just getting out of knight f3 and keeping every single threat that he's got in reserve. So another very nasty move. But if black had found the move queen g7, then white kind of doesn't have very much anymore. The big problem as well is that, you'd like to play, maybe you'd think about playing a move like knight f5. You'd want to take off like this, chase this knight away, be able to play rook g5, but we've got queen g2 mate somehow. So yeah, I mean, all that is really just proving to be a big problem there. If rook h6, we go rook f8 maybe, for example, yeah, white just isn't quick enough. I mean, something like queen h5 to try and play rook g6, we go knight f4 simply, and we're threatening g2 again. So this move queen g7 would have been absolutely winning. But these moves are hard to find. They're very hard to find, these moves, when you're short of time. Hard to be sure that everything's good. A quiet move like this. Polugayevsky played rook f8, which, seems pretty decent. Bring the rook close to the king, maybe support moves like knight f4, rook f4. Give yourself the opportunity maybe to attack the white king. But actually Mariotti just played very simply. He just took the rook off and took his piece back, knight b7. And now the engine's just saying equal. Okay, black's got an extra piece, but white's got 3 pawns for it, 4 pawns for it even. And yeah, with just knights on the board here, black's not going to find it easy to make any sort of attack because the king's exposed as well. But unfortunately, Polugayevsky couldn't quite reconcile himself somehow to the draw. In this, he sort of decided to keep on attacking and played the move knight g5. You're looking for knight f3 check. You're looking for queen e4 or knight e4. Surely you're gonna be able to make something of this position. But to his presumably sheer horror, queen h8 check happened, and the king and the knight are being forked. And it means after king e7, queen takes d4. In the space of about 4 moves, Mariotti has managed to pick up 2 pieces and remain with all of his extra pawns. So he's now, no pieces down, and he's got 4 extra pawns. Well, yeah, Polugayevsky managed to win 1 back, but yeah, this is obviously just completely hopeless. Knight and 4 pawns against knight and 1. So Polugayevsky carried on a little bit. He could frankly have just resigned at this point, but anyway, he sort of carried on. And yeah, Mariotti finished it off pretty efficiently, just drawing closer with the queen and knight, not giving any hope of perpetuals, and then this nice move g4, stopping black from even moving the knight out. Yeah, Polugayevsky gave some checks, but yeah, I mean, totally hopeless, and now he resigned. I thought that was an absolutely lovely game. I mean, the opening phase was very interesting indeed. Yeah, complicated opening phase, and actually Polugayevsky just got outplayed. But then, yeah, this lovely moment here where white could just play quietly, but Mariotti just kind of played true to his instincts and to his nickname of the Italian Fury, and just sacked everything. He just didn't quite find the right way, but the understanding that okay, I'm 2 pieces down in this attack, but the black pieces are all on the queen side, and I've got this tempo to bring my my knight into play. this is going to give me some serious attacking chances, serious numerical advantage for a short while at least on the king side. That was really very, very good judgment. And what I liked about it wasn't the most accurate way of playing, but the moves that Mariotti played were all giving black the stress and the chance to find his own mistakes. And that's kind of one of the most important things that you can do. When you're playing practically, is make sure that the opponent can find his own mistakes and that you're not forcing him to play good moves. So not playing rook f7 check. Rook f7 check was a better move, but rook f5, just give the opponent his chances. Here, not just putting a check on h8, but playing king h2, getting out of the threat, leaving black to find the mistakes. And even for such a strong player as Polugayevsky, it proved too much. And the blunders came thick and fast, and Mariotti, won a deserved game where basically you just say, Polugayevsky just got beaten by the better player on the day. No luck about it. It was just thoroughly deserved for White. So there we are. Really nice game there, and against a player who was at the absolute top of the world game in the period where he was really at his best as well. Really a really impressive victory there. Well, I hope you're enjoying these games of Mariotti. If you don't know them, then, these are definitely worth knowing. They're fantastic games, all of them. So I've got quite a few more coming up, so hopefully you'll stay with me and enjoy this series. If you like the videos, want to give a like, subscribe to the channel, tell your friends, and hope to see you at the next video. Thanks for watching.